Hello everyone and welcome to our third lecture of Families and Partnerships. And as I said, this week is all about communication and conflict resolution. So what we're looking at is definitions, what makes a good communicator, how to phrase things in a parent meeting to avoid conflict, and how we can create some really positive communication channels. So when we're looking at communication, we have to think about what are the encompassing elements of it. So communication includes obviously speaking and listening, but also the feelings and the interpretation of the message. And that's where when you have different people, they will often interpret the same words in different formats. So most definitions focus on the way that we convey the message. What we also want to focus on is all the ways that that message is made up. So the message can be words or the verbal stimuli, so exactly what the person says. It then can also encompass my core belief, which is the most important part, the body language or the physical stimuli. So your gestures, the way you hold your body, the leaning in or the backwards, and the communication through body language that others are representing back to you. And then we also have our vocal stimuli. So that's our pitch, our loudness, our speed. And a lot of that gives away other feelings that we have. So all three of those together form our communication. Now, when we look at the words that we say, that only forms about 7% of what another person hears. And when I use the word hears, I don't mean just with their ears, but actually the way that they are interpreting what you say. The vocal stimuli provides another 38%. So a firm conversational tone of language rather than a strident accusatory tone of language will get you much further with a parent than what a wussy, not confident type of language would as well. And then of course, 55% of our communication is determined by your body language and the way that you present yourself. Now, you'll find different amounts for this depending on which piece of research that you read. But if we look at that, the words we say are only 7%. So we always talk about less than 10% of our communication is actually our words. The other part is the phrasing that we are using, the tone of voice and so on, together with the body language that we use. All of those things must be working together to get good communication happening. So when we talk about total communication, it is the combination of those three things. Our body language is first. How you hold yourself, where you put your hands, the way you have your hands open or closed, the way that you lean in when you speak to somebody, the way that you shouldn't just lean back, cross your legs, have crossed arms and present to the world that you really don't want to listen to what they're saying. Think about the tone of voice. If you're not sure about what your tone of voice sounds like to others, ask some of your close friends and family. Practice and understand how your tone of voice can come across inappropriately to others. Think about what the verbal messages are that you are communicating, and I'll go through some of those in a little while. So when we're talking with parents or with other staff members or even with children, focus on your whole communication system, because what we really want to do is avoid miscommunication, because we don't want parents to leave an interaction with us going, oh my goodness, she hates my child. I don't know what we're going to do, when it wasn't your intent at all. So when you are talking with caregivers, check that they are understanding what you are trying to say. Ask them, so what do you think about what's been going on? So are you feeling okay about what we've just discussed? What would be something that you would like to add? So you're checking for their understanding. Rephrase it in some way. So don't keep saying educational terminologies, because parents and caregivers and other community members, they're not part of our professional field. They don't understand when we talk about SCASA, or when we talk about Australian curriculum, or even when we talk about different learning areas with the phrasing. So they don't understand it. We have to make sure we're avoiding miscommunication by rephrasing it. And ask more questions of the people that you are communicating with to make sure you're seeking clarification as well. So if we look at the people who are really good communicators, what are some of the commonalities that they have within that? So first of all, they're giving their total attention to the speaker. They're not flitting their eyes everywhere. They're giving good eye contact, but not too much, because otherwise you look like a freaky person. And you're demonstrating through your body language that you are actually truly interested on what is being said. So you're leaning forward, you're placing your palms on the table, you're showing them with your body that you are listening. You're not flicking through things on your computer with the screen in between you and so on. You potentially have your iPad so it's facing down so they can see that you're just writing some standard notes and so on. Caregivers get really concerned when you put a computer screen in front of them and you're typing while they're talking, because they don't know what you're typing, they don't know what you're writing, and some of them go instantly to negative things. So really think, how are you restating the parent concerns? If a parent or caregiver has called a meeting, they're concerned because they've probably spent the last month worried about something, they've been talking to their child every day and so on. No parent asks to have a meeting with you without serious concerns, not just little simple things. So you want to restate it. You want to find out, what are they feeling? How are their concerns being manifested and so on. You want to clarify what's been said previously, and you want to try and really pick up what they mean and how they're feeling about things. Where possible, you want to avoid those idea of closed responses. Well, that's what we do at the school. You might want to say, our standard policy is this. What would you like for us to consider? And so that way you're answering it as somebody who is open, rather than our school policy is boom. So you want to try and avoid those closed responses, and you definitely don't want to come across as, well, if this was happening, then this is what I would be doing. You need to ensure that you are showing respect, because you want to recognize their concerns, their opinions, and their questions. You want to make sure that they are feeling validated, that you are not dismissing them. So even for you, it may seem like a trivial matter, but to a caregiver, their child could be coming home every day really upset over something that you think is something trivial, but it's not to them and their family. So we have to make sure that we are not minimizing any of the issues that a caregiver brings to us. And we want to make sure that we are also not overwhelming a parent. If we start to use diagnoses, we start to use complicated language, we talk too much and we haven't let them lead into the conversation, we just hammer in the message that we want to communicate, that's really going to make a parent feel quite overwhelmed, and they won't be able to take in all the information that you are saying. So as much as we might feel it is their fault, and sometimes things are, you want to really emphasize it's no one's fault. Don't follow that up with but. It's no one's fault, and these are the types of things that we can do together to make it work. You don't want to go, it's no one's fault, but if you did this. So the language is completely different when you want to get them on board. We always want to work together for the best possible impact for their child. So you're going to have difficult meetings. So what are we going to do? Always keep in mind, no one ever wins an argument. You both just leave feeling awful. You will go home crying, or angry. You will need to go and see your leadership team. They will go home very angry at you, and no doubt they will email your leadership team. You want to really stay calm And you want to always talk about the good points of the child before any concerns. You don't launch into Johnny's having a really bad time at school at the moment. You want to launch in a completely different mode and talk about, so Johnny's been telling me all these amazing things that he's been doing on the weekend, and what have you been doing? And I heard that you went camping. And so the caregiver needs to know you actually care about their child. So then you can start to think about, okay, how do you get your point across without making the parent feel as though they have done something wrong? So be aware, if egos are damaged, they come out with fists flying. And that could be yelling at you, it could be ignoring you, it could be just not listening to you at all, or it could be a whole lot of anger that comes out. So if you have a child with complex needs, you want to try and focus on one issue and choose the one that is the least difficult. Focus on one at a time and be very specific. And don't go, oh, and then next week we'll talk about the other issues that your child is having. No, because that will only result in parents being concerned. And then you want to listen actively, because what you truly want to do is become an ally with the parents to make sure that their child's needs are going to come front and center always. You want to work with the parents, not against them, where possible. So parents become better partners in the whole teaching and learning environment when they see you as a way of supporting them and their child. When they feel that you are listening carefully, and that they will then listen carefully back again. If they recognize that you're really trying hard to understand their point of view, they'll listen to your point of view as well. It has to be two ways. They will show respect for the teacher, and they'll recognize that your concerns are significant if they feel you are doing the same to them. They'll know that you have had a really tricky time. Some caregivers find it difficult to understand the complexity of teaching though, and so they will only have their child at front of mind. So helping them to understand that the child that they have, who is their absolute center of their universe, is one of the amazing children in your classroom. That's important for them to understand that they're one of the amazing children in the classroom, and you're doing the utmost for them. Always know that if parents start to rephrase and check understanding with you, they are on board with you. So embrace it. Don't go, oh my God, why are they asking that again? They're rephrasing it. They're checking that they understand what's going on. They will become partners when they are actually speaking openly with you about their child. And genuinely, they want to work with you. They don't want to be your enemy. They want to work with you. As much as sometimes it might feel that way with certain parents, they truly do want to work with you. So what are some of our key tips? This is one that I'm a really firm believer in. Positive speaking at every opportunity. So think about how you phrase a difficult topic. So start by saying what you feel is wonderful about their child. Think of the great qualities that you're seeing, and then lead into some of the tricky things. So if you say, Johnny is having the most amazing time in so many ways at school at the moment. He's doing this so well and this so well. And gosh, it's just so great to see how much he's grown over the last term. And then you can move into, there's a couple of issues that I just want to raise with you because I really feel they're starting to impact on his amazing growth and development. Then you can start to move in. If you launch into, I'm a little bit concerned about Johnny and I really wanted to call this meeting to have a chat with you about him. Instantly the caregivers are on the back foot and they're like, what do you mean? Why haven't we heard about this before? What on earth is going on? And the other thing is they feel that you don't care about their child. So always start with the amazing things that they're doing. Now I know some children make that very hard, but find the good things that they are doing. So don't just lead with the issue and then you'll have to play defense the whole entire time. Parents will get angry with you if you lead in with, I've called this meeting because I'm very concerned. I know that's what you want to say, but don't. So positive statements, always accompany them with good body language and a really warm tone of voice. Keep it together with your positive speaking. So remember, words, tone of voice, and body language, those three elements together. So when we are listening truly is where we start to have good communication happening. So you want to first of all be receptive to what the other person is saying. You want to genuinely pay attention for it. You want to use silence. Use your wait time. So ask a caregiver, so have there been any weird things that they have been doing at home? Have they said anything to you that's caused you to be a bit concerned? Pause. Let the caregivers think about it and then respond back to you. Use your wait time just like you do. Seek agreement from them about the types of behaviours or experiences that have been going on. See if you can find a meeting of the minds. Sometimes as educators, we avoid difficult conversations and we beat around the bush. Try not to with parents. Try to get to the heart of the matter. So if you're genuinely worried about a child's behaviour and you're worried that they are injuring other children and so on, try and get to it, but avoid the ambiguity. You might say a whole lot of great things about their child. You might say that they're, really rambunctious, and find out if they're doing anything at home that is getting them nice and active and so on. And then you can move into they're very active in the playground, sometimes a little too active, and they've ended up hurting a couple of children. Can we just talk about some of those things? You don't say, and you want to avoid things and so on. So don't avoid ambiguity. Be clear about it. Remove the distractions. So if you're getting distracted by other things that are happening and so on, be very active in your listening and remove distractions of other conversations or other people and so on, so that you are 100% listening to the caregivers. Move to a different room and so on, so that you can really show them that you are paying attention to them. And you are phrasing some difficult topics, so think and give time. Be patient with the caregivers. So one of the key things that I can give you advice about as you move into working with other adults is learn to watch and observe body language and how your body language communicates different messages. Make sure that your body language and your vocal messages match one another. So if you are very nervous, but you want to try and communicate with strong language, the two will cancel each other out and your nervousness will take over. So if you're not sure how you come across, do some role plays with some different people. Find what your natural way of being is. Do a little bit of research on effective body language and how you can implement some different ideas within your own communication strategies. So simple things that are open responses. So nodding, smiling, doing that, oh, okay, tell me more. Wow, gosh, that must have been something really interesting for you. Tell me a little bit about it. Avoid your closed responses. So moderate your face. Try not to frown. Try not to defend yourself. Don't say, oh, but I'm doing this and this. Try not to respond to distractions that are going on around you that make it appear that you're not paying attention when the other person is speaking. So you want to have very open responses as much as possible when you are working with a caregiver, particularly if you're having any difficulties. Now, reflective listening is the idea that we reflect the speaker's feelings. So what we want to do is we want to use what we call attending behaviour. So we have good eye contact and we are interested in what they have to say. We are listening for the feelings behind the words. Sometimes the words are masking a whole lot of other feelings, and you want to respond with a statement that relates to the feeling, not just the words. Because oftentimes you are saying things to the caregivers that they potentially know, but they have been hoping wouldn't be apparent. So particularly if you are talking about difficult behaviours that their child has been exhibiting, they will know that it's likely to come up. So they might have anger, they might have hurt, they might have complete sadness, they might have depression. So listen for the feelings that are behind those messages. So then when you are talking, what we want to do is have the I, you, and we messages really clear. So I messages are things like, when Mimi doesn't finish her homework, I feel a bit worried that she'll fall behind. I move to a lot of these you messages that you can avoid. If you do we messages, when Mimi doesn't finish her homework, we have real concerns because she may fall behind. So we use an I or a we. What we try and avoid is a you message. So we don't want to flip it because that assumes blame. If you would just help Mimi with her homework, she would do better in class. Instantly, parents are going to get upset at you. If you talk about when she doesn't finish her homework, we have concerns. We're really worried that she's feeling a bit worried, that she's stressing out about things. Can you tell me more about what happens at home after school? Is homework an issue for you? And that opens the door for parents to go, oh my goodness, when she comes home, she is so tired and we just have such an issue getting her to do her homework. So then you can move down a different pathway. If you go and say, if you'd just help her with her homework, she'd do better in class, and parents will just respond with anger back towards you, and you don't get to the real message about it. So you want to think about how you can avoid those you messages, because that instantly puts the blame on the caregivers, whereas you want to have open dialogue in some way. So think about how you can potentially rephrase things. So rephrasing means that you go through and you think, what was the main part of this whole big conversation that we have gone round and round and round about? And you want to say it in a nice condensed version. So I hear that homework has become an issue at home and that it's becoming something that is causing lots of fights between yourself and Mimi. And then you're restating the problem. And what you're trying to do is avoid misunderstandings. Once you've restated, you can then say, okay, let's look at some possible solutions or some things that we can do or some ways that we can assist or some alternatives instead of creating that problem for you at home. So we're trying to avoid any of the ideas where the caregivers don't feel that we are understanding them. So that rephrasing builds the caring and trust. Reframing it, on the other hand, takes it slightly different. It takes the sting out of negative descriptors of the child. So think about some of the words that you might use to describe a student when you are talking to another teacher. And those words can be seen as really not positive from a caregiver's point of view. So if we talk about a child being very loud, they're very loud in class, aren't they? You're not going to say that to a caregiver. You might talk about how they have many opinions that they like to state very openly during class discussions. And you can say some of those opinions are causing a couple of issues with a few children. Whereas if you say they're very loud and they're upsetting other children, it doesn't have the same niceness, does it? You might talk about how they're very active and very vocal in the room and so on. We wouldn't use the word steals. We'd say sometimes Johnny has a few difficulties understanding that certain items in the classroom are not his. So we're finding that he's taking them without asking the owners of them. What's your things that you have at home? Does he have rules about when he is able to ask or when he's able to use different things at home? So you turn it onto a positive. Now, things like they won't follow rules. You can talk about how they have their own agenda and their own timelines, and then you can say, and sometimes that has an impact on the rest of the class. We have to wait for them a little bit. You might talk about, instead of saying they're very stubborn, you might say they're very determined, and you might be able to even have a little joke about some things and so on. Shy can often be seen as a negative, but often sometimes a shy child, it's not a negative, it's just that they're very quiet in their own way, they're very self-contained, and you just want to help them come out of themselves a little bit, or what as a school we can do to help your child. So then we think about our communication when we're having meetings and so on. Let's think about how we can then build beyond just having face-to-face meetings or telephone meetings or Zoom meetings or anything like that. So what we want to think about is how we can make sure there is great communication happening between the school and the caregivers, or the centre and the caregivers, in different ways. And we can have that in the form of one-way communication. So that could be things like our newsletters. Most schools have now moved to digital newsletters, or they've moved to different things like Seesaw or School Bag, different apps that allow the school to communicate directly with the parents. And we talk about one-way communication, meaning that the school sends it to the caregivers in some way. So simplify things in newsletters, make sure you have clear headlines, have tips for parents, have books, have children's work, make it quite rich if possible. Involve your local media, and that might be your social media, it might be Facebook pages that are related to the school and so on, but put up lots and lots of positive things about the school, because that also ends up being something that other parents in the community might be able to look at as well. Sometimes community radio, you've got even your standard radio stations and so on. We still have community papers that get delivered in different suburbs. You might get your school into some of those. And then thinking about getting the sports events and carnivals covered and so on. Every school should have a handbook of some sort, or you might even have that as a year level handbook. I know when I taught kindies, I had a little handbook that I would give to all of the parents, and we had our meeting in the November of the year before. So that way they came along, they knew how to prep their child and what they needed to bring and do and organise and so on. And that would have things like procedures for start of school, our transitions, what to bring for food, what to bring for clothes and so on. We would have some ideas about the assessment and reporting info, some facilities and so on, any different programs that you offer, and dates that they might be able to come in and visit and so on. So think about what your handbook can be, either at whole school level and or at individual classroom or year level. Send notes home to parents, not just when the child is having a difficulty, but absolutely when a child is doing well. Send a little note home and say they have had the best day. They were so kind and respectful with this particular incident that happened today, and thank you so much, and give a great compliment to your child. Obviously send a note home when you want to arrange a meeting, but also if a parent or caregiver has been really supportive of you, say thank you so much. It's been so great to know that I have you in my corner for this and this particular circumstance. And send a note home asking for assistance, genuinely saying, oh, we've got a school excursion coming up, or we're doing cooking next week in the classroom. Love to have some parents come to help. We've got sports carnival coming up. Make sure it's some easy things and some hard things, because quite often it'll be things that you will get. Some parents will be able to attend and some won't. But make sure that it's clear and regular. Think not just negative things, but lots and lots of things that are going on in the school. Remember with notes and newsletters and handbooks that all of those things need to be checked with your leadership teams. So most schools will have a policy that you're not to send anything out to a class unless someone in your assistant principal or your deputy has checked it first, or your line manager, whoever that is in your school or in the centre. So make sure that everything gets checked as appropriate for the particular circumstance. So every school will have a variety of these one-way communication modes. Then you've got your two-way communication. So that might be, some schools use Seesaw. You might have email for that. Some have other different apps that are used, and so on. So the two-way communication is where parents can email, contact whichever way and it's a backwards and a forwards. So it means that both the school and the parents are communicating effectively, and this really is essential in our settings. So you've got your simple things like your telephone calls. Encourage visits to the classroom, and those visits could be every morning, that you say, right, got the classroom open from 8:30, school starts officially at 10 to 9, you've got 20 minutes where you want the children to come in, mum and dad, brother, sister, auntie, uncle can pop in, say hello, and then they need to, as long as they have everything ready by 10 to 9, that's what you can do. Use your apps like Seesaw for that communication. So show them some of the things going on in the classroom if they can't get in there, and so on. And that way you can build that relationship in different ways. Now, invitation. So think, we have all these different celebration days and so on. You got dress up days, you've got grandparents days, you've got whatever days. You might have a special teddy bears picnic day where you invite any of the parents, caregivers or siblings to come along and have a picnic day. You might have a red lunch day where we're having lots of things that have the colour red in them, and so on. So think about how you can invite parents to be part of your classroom community, and that applies regardless of the age bracket. Now, we find that as the children in the school get older, we do have more parents who then go back to work, but it doesn't stop you from inviting them. You just have to know that you're probably not going to get as many that will come along. But it is amazing how many parents will be able to just wrangle things at their work so that they can pop in every so often. And then, of course, you've got your standard special events, your Mother's Day morning tea and so on, special things that are going on. So make sure that you invite parents and encourage them to be part of it. Now, what are the things that stop sometimes things going on? So if we look at parent blockages, they become very protective. They feel inadequate, particularly if they have had a poor schooling experience themselves. They may go through an avoidance where they are just not coming into school because they do not want to be part of school. And that often comes from that idea that they may have had a very bad time at school. They could be quite confrontational, so try and think how you avoid that. And a lot of that as an educator is to make sure that you are always open, honest, and positive about the children in your class. Our school blockages, you could have that idea that you are the authority with them. Sometimes you fall into the sympathising and counsellor role, whereas you need to be the teacher. Yes, you need to help them, but it's not your role. Try and avoid saying, oh, but I was told to do this. Take responsibility and say, right, I'll see what I can do. I know that I think this is our current school policy. However, let me see what else we could work out to better accommodate this particular situation. And we are all busy. It is one of my pet hates that we take on that idea that we're very busy and that we can't possibly make time for parents. If you don't make time for them, you'll become even busier because they will be cranky at you. So take the time to listen to them authentically. So let's summarize our main things. So communication, it really is an essential feature of connecting our home and our school. We have to make sure that we are taking the time and effort to communicate effectively. It must be two-way communication. it must have a reciprocal nature of it. And it must be ongoing and provide multiple opportunities and lots of different styles. As the key educator, it's up to us to often initiate that communication and to persevere. If you're having difficult conversations with parents, they will try and avoid them sometimes because they occasionally don't want to confront some of the issues that are going on with their child. And as a teacher, we have to sometimes make them confront some of those issues, even though it might be tricky. So it's up to us to persevere and to continue persevering in some way. So communication is difficult, but it's not impossible. And it's up to us to make sure that we do the best that we can. So let's have a think next week is about culture and how we build effective culture and how we utilize the culture of everyone in our community to build those effective family and school partnerships.